What do you do on Sundays?
We talk about Cate Blanchett, the acting, the costumes, the awards, but mostly the Blanchett of it all.
I'm not acting.
You think this is a love affair?
I saw you, Erica. Meeting in the middle.
This is Sundays with Kate, and I'm your host, Murtada Elfadl. Welcome to Sundays with Kate, the podcast series about the films of Cate Blanchett. Every week, we choose a Cate Blanchett film and talk about it with a guest. This is your host, Murtada Elfadl, and I'm very excited to welcome to the podcast for the first time, filmmaker and podcaster Chels. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me on. This is a dream come true for me. I'm so excited to talk about Kate and everything else.
It's honor to have you on. I've listened to you on podcasts. I have talked to you on Twitter, but this is actually our first time sort of like talking to each other in real life, if you can call Zoom real life. But I'm very excited to talk to you.
No, this is fun. Zoom is real life at this point, so this totally counts.
Yes, it does. So the movie that we're going to be talking about this week is The House with a Clock in Its Walls. And when I think of this title, it's just the title. It's like so long. It reminds me of that other Kate movie, the Indiana Jones one, which I could never remember what it's called. I just know it's the Indiana Jones movie with Cate Blanchett that everybody hates. And so it's one of those long titles.
Yeah, I still cannot get the title right on this one. I'm like, there's a clock. Is it in the walls? Is it on the walls? Is it more than one clock? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it's more like, is it a clock or clocks? Because I just called it House with Clocks. But then when I actually sat down to watch it and to prepare for this episode, it's just one clock, but it's many walls.
Pretty much. No, this film was something.
It's one of the few, like when I started this podcast project, which has been going now for, I don't know, 2.5 years, whatever. But, you know, I took breaks. It's not like I've been talking about Cate Blanchett for 2.5 years. I took long breaks in the middle. But this was one of the very few movies that I haven't seen before I started the project. Because it's always like I come to a movie with, you know, I've seen it when it came out or years later or whatever. I always think that I've seen all of them. And then suddenly there is one I haven't seen. And this is one of the few that I haven't seen. And I haven't actually seen it until just a couple of days ago to talk to you.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it either, but I had heard good things about it. I knew it made money, oddly enough. That's one thing I knew. And that I'm like, oh, it's probably a good kids movie. I consume a ton of children's content. So I'm like, yay, good. One for the kids there, I guess. But yeah, no, this was a first time for me.
Yeah. And it's definitely, I think you nailed it. It's definitely one for the kids. Like, you know, always actors with kids will say things like, oh, you know, I made a movie so my kids would watch it. And I know Kate's kid, if I know, you know, about her, I think they're older. They can probably maybe watch all of her movies, except I think she has somebody, you know, she has a lot of them. I think she has somebody who's really young. So probably this is for like the young ones.
It had to be, or it's like she had to have been friends with somebody behind the scenes and said, yeah, sure, I'll do this. Because it's a very odd choice just looking at her filmography.
Mm-hmm.
Then amongst the other children's stuff, this really stands out to me.
Yeah, totally. And I think she really loved working on this movie because she's reteaming with Eli Roth, who directed in Borderlands, which I think they have already shot. So it should be coming at us anytime.
He must be somebody nice to work with because like I don't usually enjoy his like for adult movies. I don't enjoy his stuff, but everyone seems to really like working with him. And I hope he's just very nice.
Yeah, that's the impression I get too. And I think I only really know him from the Quentin Tarantino movie, Inglourious Basterds. I think he had a supporting role in that movie. And that's my only reference with Eli Roth. But I know he's an actor, he's a director, he's done a lot.
Yeah, he usually does like spooky, like really gory stuff that I'm generally not into.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, if that's your thing. But again, this is also an odd choice for him because he also makes really gross movies.
Yeah, I mean, it is spooky, but it's just not like it's spooky for children. and maybe not spooky enough, which is we're going to talk about it. But we're going to talk about the house with a clock in its walls. But before we get into that, Chels, I want to ask you about your impression about Cate Blanchett.
Oh, goodness. If we're talking just in general, I feel like Cate Blanchett was one of those actresses, like when I was very young, I'm like, oh, this is a real actress. This is not just somebody on my television. Like, I vividly remember hearing her voice in Lord of the Rings and being like, oh, she's different. She's something special. Like, she left a very weird impression on me, even though she's not really in those movies that much. She like haunts them somehow. And then like actually watching movies outside of that, I was like, oh no, she is a real actress. I was right. Young me was right.
It's so funny because I think Lord of the Rings is the movie that a lot of people bring up because it was a few years into her career. Like I think the first one was in 2001, something like that. So that
I was like 10 years old when it came out, also 150 years old at the same time. And I was like, I really relate to this very beautiful but terrifying woman who's just like, she did scar me in that movie at the very end of the first one. It was wonderful. I loved it.
So when she did that, I've already been in love because I fell in love with her with Elizabeth. So that was the first movie I saw of her, which came, I think, a few years before The Lord of the Rings. But it's funny, talking to people about Cate in this podcast, there is people like me who are like, oh, Elizabeth. I saw her in Elizabeth. I fell in love. That's the thing. And then there are people like you whose first introduction is The Lord of the Rings. I think it's just those two movies. So you either saw her at Elizabeth or it was The Lord of the Rings.
I saw Elizabeth probably right when Return of the King came out. Like that's when I found the DVD at like a Blockbuster knockoff. And I was like, oh, this is like a real movie. I love this.
Yeah. I've always thought of like, I saw her in Elizabeth. I'm like, who is this? And I haven't been, and I haven't stopped thinking about her since then.
I get it. She's captivating. I'm like, how is this the same person who gave me nightmares?
I know, right?
Just a few years ago.
So let me ask you one more question about Cate, and then we can get into the movie. When you think of Cate Blanchett, what do you think of? Like, I know we all think of, we form these relationships with actors and their persona on screen. So what do you think when you think of Cate?
It's very difficult because she's so versatile. Like, I named my tattoo after the Harold, They're Lesbians meme because I love Carol. We were the pretentious film. It was a bunch of me and master's students and film kids. We all went to go see Carol and we were like, this is the greatest film ever made. But then I also think she was way too good to be in Ocean's 8 and so cool and hot at the same time. And so it's just, I think of so many different things when I think of her. And that's kind of why I love her. Like, I remember seeing Blue Jasmine on a very hot summer day, like the air condition didn't work in the theater. And I walked out of that film and I'm like, she's winning Best Actress for that. Like, I had not seen anything else in contention that year, I don't think. And I'm like, she's winning. It's fine. It's really hot today. But she's so versatile and fun. Like, if you look at all of her red carpet stuff, she's so witty and silly in a way that she doesn't always get to be on screen. So I don't know. She just holds like this really brilliant place in my mind of just being way too cool and smart.
I'm happy you brought up Ocean's 8 because I think when that movie came out, I was expecting a little bit maybe more than what it was. And I was like, oh, this movie wasn't good. I don't think it deserves Cate, whatever. But as I've watched it and I've talked to people, and a lot of people bring it up on this podcast when I ask them exactly about, what they feel about Cate, and exactly what you said. It's that's the fun Cate that we see maybe in interviews on the red carpet, but it's never been captured on film. She's a serious actor. So she does, movies like Carol and Blue Jasmine and, serious movies, but also like that fun part doesn't come out a lot, but it came out in Ocean's 8. So now a few years down the line, I'm like, Ocean's 8 was a pretty fun movie. I'm happy it's there.
It is. it's one of those perfectly fine middle of the road films, but like her and Sandra Bullock somehow elevate this very boring director and pretty boring script and just have chemistry with everybody. And also her costumes in that, I'm like, this is a lot of queer women. They saw Carol. They're going to go straight to this and not even pay attention to the plot.
Yes. And I think also like, if we're talking about her costumes in Ocean's 8, like when you see her not on the red carpet, when you see sort of those paparazzi photos, like I remember when she did a play in New York a few years ago, there was a lot of paparazzi photos of her just walking to work into the theater. And she kind of looked like she looks in Ocean's 8. So probably that's the closest to her real life persona.
I believe it, just being hot and cool. I believe it. I'm very pro hot people just in life, and Cate Blanchett is right there.
Yes, me too. So let's talk about the movie in question. So for this episode, I'm talking with Chels about The House with a Clock in Its Wall. This is, as we said, starring Kate and also directed by Eli Ross. The other actors in this movie are Jack Black, who's the lead, or maybe he is the co-lead, because there is a kid. The movie is about a kid, since it's a kid's movie, and the kid is Owen Vaccaro, who I'm looking at IMDb right now. He's much older. Even though this movie is only a few years old, it's from what year? From 20...
Isn't it like from 3.5 years
yes,
ago?
it's from 2018. Like so, but you know, kids grow up fast. Other actors in this movie are Renee, Elise Goldsberry, Kyle MacLachlan, Colleen Camp. One of the younger actors is Suni Suljic, who we know from the what's his name? Yorgos Lanthimos movie, the one with Nicole Kidman. Totally blanking on the title, but anyway.
Oh, Killing of the Sacred Deer.
Yes, that one. So The House with a Clock in Its Walls, I can't believe this long title, is, according to IMDb, a young orphan named Louis Barnveld aids his magical uncle in locating a clock with the power to bring about the end of the world. So he's an orphan. He comes, his parents die, so he goes to live with his uncle. This is Jack Black. Cate Blanchett plays Florence Zimmerman, who is Jack Black's friend and neighbor. And there is a lot of machinations and plot about this clock that can change the world. The evil people are Kyle MacLachlan and Renee Elise Goldsberry. And, you know, they save the world, basically. Kate is a witch. Jack Black is a warlord. And the kid is trying to be magical. Is that what it is about? What do you say? Is that what's it about?
That's pretty much it. Like, and it's an oddly paced film. Like, genuinely, the first half of it is the kid learning magic before any evil really happens. Yes. And it's like school bullies is the first half of it. And then it just like really amps it up in the last 30 minutes. And it was kind of confusing for me. I had to go and read the plot description as I was watching it just to figure out what was going on at some points. Because it's very focused on the child, Jack Black, and Jack feels definitely supporting, and Kate is just like, she pops in. It almost feels
she's
like
a visitor.
She is.
She comes in, and then, you know, she comes in later on. She has one big magic trick. And even her like backstory, she's supposed to have lost her family during the war. I think this movie is set in the 50s, so all of them have just lived through the Second World War. But even that is just sort of like, to me, it was like tossed off. Like, oh, we're supposed to care that you lost your family during the war?
It is very in the background. And it's like, while reading plot descriptions, it's like she has a tattoo on her arm. And I'm like, oh, wait, was she in a concentration camp? Because the film doesn't exactly say it or spell everything out for you. But the plot description I read really did for me, because it is, I guess it's based on a children's book.
Yes, it's based on a book by John Bellairs, which I've never heard of. But anyway, that is kind of what you were saying about the character, sort of like, I usually like when they don't explain lots of things in movies, but I think here I needed a little bit of explanation. about the background of all these characters, which is funny because this movie has a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of flashback to go back and explain like the origin story of their villain, Kyle MacLachlan, the origin story of Renee, Elise Goldsberry. They tell us how, you know, the orphan at the center of this all, how his parents died. There's a lot of flashbacks, but I'm like, could we have gotten one more flashback so we can understand Kate's character and then her relationship and friendship with the Jack Black character? Like, it seemed that was important for your two top billed stars.
It's an interesting role to cast Cate Blanchett in because she's two-time Oscar winner Cate Blanchett. And like, it's very, like, it's a throwaway role in many ways. Like most films, you would just cast somebody from television, maybe like a recognizable television star. I am not denigrating television in any way.
But different.
This is like yeah, it is. Like, this is a mid-budget film. I texted my friends, this feels like a Disney Channel original movie that had way too much money.
Yes.
Because it did look pretty good. Costumes were really good on Kate, especially. And I'm like, I wish they'd given the story a bit of a once-over once you cast Cate Blanchett in it and kind of beef it up a little.
I agree. I think her role needed to be beefed up a little bit more than what we have. But what we have is there are lots of humorous little bits. One of my favorite things is when she's introduced, there's all these sort of like verbal spars and barbs thrown back and forth between her and Jack Black. And I really like that. That was my favorite part of the film. And I think when he calls her, like they make fun of how they each look. And so he says that she literally looks like a Q-tip. That to me was one of the funniest lines in the film.
It is really good because like costume wise, I can see it. And they do have really good chemistry and banter. If this was like for a slightly older audience, I think that would be a way more fun dynamic to dive into. I really enjoyed them. I thought they were both having a great time in this very silly movie.
Yeah, totally. And I also like the look of Kate, like she's playing a witch. They keep telling us she's a witch, but her costuming and her makeup hair is totally not what like is the traditional witch look. Like usually witches will have free flowing hair, but here she has a prim, bob.
She's very put together. Yes. Like everything, like the outfits are like bright purple colors. And I loved her costuming and her hair and everything and her makeup. It was so much fun, but she's not giving you Tangled witch vibes. She's not giving you Susan Sarandon. Like she's very like almost flight attendant like in many ways.
Yes. Or Mary Poppins, because she does
exactly
spring out an umbrella at the end of this film,
that is true.
It always made me feel like I'm like, oh, so are we supposed to think of her as Mary Poppins? Because the costuming definitely looks like a little bit like Mary Poppins, very prim and proper.
It really does.
Yeah.
And I keep forgetting this is not a Disney movie because I feel like it should be a Disney movie.
Yes, it totally should be a Disney movie. It's all about kids and whatever and Mary Poppins, yeah. And maybe that's why they costumed her as Mary Poppins, because it wasn't a Disney movie and they wanted people to think like, Disney, because Disney's popular.
Yeah.
So Chels, I've always wanted to talk to you and invite you on the podcast, but I always try to think of a reason to invite someone. And so I saw your tweets about Jack Black. And I was like, oh, Chels, I want to have Chels on the podcast and we have this movie and that would be perfect. So tell me about Jack Black and why you like him.
I am a queer woman, but I genuinely think Jack Black is one of the hottest, most confident men to have walked this earth because he's always himself. He's always genuine. Whenever he's joking, it's never mean-spirited, even though he makes fun of himself all the time. It's silly, fun, almost like a weird, pure energy. And I do think he is very witty. He's a great actor. He's one of my favorite parts of The Holiday, the Nancy Meyers film. Everybody's Jude Law. And I'm like, honestly, Jack Black is the person you want to date in that film. I feel
so
like
nice
he's
in that
a great
film.
catch.
Yeah.
He's so nice. He has a great job. He lives in California. He's really silly and cool.
Mhm.
And then I don't know, every time I see him, he just makes me happy. Like his TikToks are so silly and he just does not care. Like he's just always having a good time and I appreciate him as a performer. We need more performers that don't take themselves seriously and really just go with the flow.
Yes, I agree. So I have to admit, like, I don't really have much of a relationship with Jack Black. I think he makes movies that I'm kind of not that interested in, but I do know him from The Holiday. And I do agree with you that he is very charming in The Holiday in a sort of offbeat way. And also The Holiday, I think one of its strengths is that it makes you really feel for him and that he is absolutely an amazing catch for Kate Winslet. And he plays that part with such warmth that frankly surprised me because I think of him in my mind. I know him mostly from the Oscars, where he had presented awards at the Oscars a couple of times, and he did those sort of song sketches with Will Ferrell, and that's really my point with him. And I always find him funny and charming, but also so sort of loud and a big personality. So he undercuts all of that in The Holiday with this very warm sort of presence that I was kind of surprised by. So, and I think a lot of that also appears here in this movie because here he has to take care of his nephew. He is trying to teach him. He's sort of a mentor and a teacher and an uncle. And yes, the movie is, has all these spooky things and magic and plots and things flying at you. But also, I think he brings that a little bit of that same warm presence that he brought to The Holiday to the house. I can't say that title. The House with a Clock in its walls.
You're totally right. Like, I think some people kind of miscast or just like they saw him be loud one time and think that's all he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like when you get him to The Holiday and even things like School of Rock, where he is loud, but you see him and how he plays off people in a very different way. I love the film Bernie. It's a very weird film. Like, it's very strange, but I love it. And it's, if you can write to these other sides of him and not just make him loud and shouting and singing a song, I think you really tap into something special. Not everybody does that, but when it is there, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I have to admit one more thing. I always sort of mixed up Jack Black and Zach Galifianakis. I could never tell them apart.
That is so fair. I've learned that Zach is just exactly The Hangover. It feels like over and over, and he really plays into the sad guy, whereas Jack Black feels more optimistic, and I trust him with children. Like, he is so good at being around children and not being weird. Like, School of Rock, again, great film, like underrated classic. We don't give Oscars to comedy. We should.
He's
That's
amazing
like
in that film. Yes, absolutely. I agree.
And then you look at something like this, where it's like you see him shouting at the kid in one scene, and the kid is just like folding in on himself and trying to explain. And like you watch Jack Black's face change from anger to sadness to like, I have failed this kid. And it's like he does that without saying a word, and it's all within like a small moment. And I'm like, oh, these are the things that, like, yes, this is a very silly film that I don't know if I would recommend to everybody, but if you watch it, Jack Black is giving great performance.
Yes. So your recommendation for his coolest moment is School of Rock.
I mean, you're always going to have a good time with School of Rock.
Totally.
Everybody loves Mike White right now. Mike White is in it. He, I think, wrote it with Richard Linklater or co-wrote it. I don't know. One of the two. But it is just magical fun, and we need more fun.
Yes, I agree. And I will recommend that everybody go watch him at the Oscars. I think it was 2003 or 2004, where he presented the Best Original Song Award with Will Ferrell. And they did this song about the song they play when you go long in your speeches. It's a very fun moment. I always remember when, his line in the song where he says, it's a funny song, and he's like, look at Catherine Zeta Jones, she's snoring. Like, that's my favorite Jack Black moment. I'll link to it in the podcast. So you can, if you haven't seen
everybody
it.
go watch it. Just go watch all of that. And again, I say Will Ferrell is better without Adam McKay. And I've said that for years, and now I feel justified. We'll talk about that more later.
Yes. We're also going to play a game with later, and we'll talk more about The House with a Clock in its Walls. But Chels, I wanted to ask you first about your podcasts, and you have a few of them.
Yes. So my first podcast was the Community Rewatch podcast, where we've been rewatching Community, but also we do random offshoots of other TV shows. Right now, we're actually covering Mythic Quest Season 2 because we have befriended their creator, Megan Gans, and Mythic Quest is a delight. I say it's better than Community. So look forward to that. We're going to have Megan back on the show to talk about the episode she directed, and Mythic Quest is just a great show. And then I have Untitled Cinema Gals project. Me and Morgan did a bunch of episodes last year. We're gearing up for a new season. I have some very deranged episode themes coming your way in 2022. I'll tell you more about those after the show. And then we are also doing a mini series. I'm covering RuPaul's Drag Race with two friends, and that'll be on the Cinema Gals feed because they're just miniature episodes because I just like Drag Race. It's my joy.
Oh, I love Drag Race too.
And then, come on.
I didn't know you did a podcast about Drag Race. I am so going to watch.
We just came up with this idea last week. So.
Okay. All right.
We just decided. We'll have you on this season.
All right. That's going to be a must listen for me, and I hope for everybody listening.
Yeah. So go find me. It's Chels725 on anywhere that matters. Twitter, Letterboxd. My Letterboxd is deranged though, so enjoy that.
Letterboxd for me, I love your Letterboxd. And Letterboxd for me is like where I say the real stuff. Like, on Twitter, whatever, on my podcast, I try to be, a critic. But on Letterboxd, I just say the real stuff. So if you want the truth, go to Letterboxd.
Go to Letterboxd. Sometimes I'm genuine. Most of the time I am just amplified silliness. Like, I keep joking, King Kong is my best actor from Godzilla vs. Kong this year. You'll never know if I'm genuine.
That sounds like fun. So give Chels a follow. And I can't wait to listen to what you have to say about RuPaul's Drag Race. That's amazing. But let's go to the topic back to the topic at hand today. And this movie was Cate and Jack Black. And I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite scene in this movie? I have one, but I'll let you go first.
Oh, goodness. I do. I mean, I guess I'm going to spoil this film a little bit. I feel like most people are probably not going to watch this one.
It's 4 years old or 3.5 years old.
It's hard to find. You have to pay like $2. It's fine. But I really like the scene where Cate Blanchett is like locked up and stuff. And like the whole thing is she can't really use her magic because she lost her family in a concentration camp and she like lost that part of herself there. And she's like found this new family with Jack Black and the kid. I don't know the kid's name, honestly, but
Owen, something like that.
And then she's able to, something like that. But then she's able to use her magic again. And I actually really felt that. I was like, this is a pretty cute moment. If I was 10 years old, I would really, really love this.
Yeah, that was a cute moment. My favorite moment in this movie has nothing to do with Cate, which is very surprising to me. But there is, so one of the baddies is played by Renee, Elise Goldsberry, and she sort of like inhabits the bodies of other people. And so there is one scene where it starts with one of the other neighbors of Jack's is played by Colleen Camp. Her name is Mrs. Hanchett. And so Renee goes into her body. So the scene starts with the transformation of Colleen Camp into Renee, Elise Goldsberry, and then into another actor who plays the kid's mom. And so, but they're doing the special effects and the performance from these three actresses. They're doing it as if they're eggs hatching. So every time the transformation happens from one to the other, they're like turning their heads around and doing all these body movements. And I just thought it was such a fun visual. And I was like, oh, this is a good special
It really
effect.
is. And it's actually kind of scary. Like if I put myself in the mind of like my 7-year-old niece and I'm like, oh, this would scare the crap out of me. That's the point. And again, Renee Elise Goldsberry, this film has such a good cast.
Yes.
It has no right to be this well cast.
Yes.
But I was so delighted to see her in a villainous role. Like, I think the closest we've ever really got to that is Wiki in Girls 5 Eva,
Yeah.
who's like the greatest character ever made. But I love seeing her in a slightly more wicked side.
Yes, she's really, really delicious in this film. I just think there's not enough of her. I wish there was a little bit more.
I always need more of her, but I really needed more of this character. Like maybe she could have been the main villain in a way instead of Twin Peaks, Mr.
Yes. I mean, Kyle MacLachlan is an actor I enjoy, but he's like under a lot of latex makeup in this film, and you can't even recognize him.
I think that's the detriment, is the makeup on him. Is it didn't feel necessary to what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like he could have just looked ghostly and like with some cracks on his face, but he looks real scary and weird.
Yes, absolutely. So let's play a game. Before we talk a little bit more about the film, I have a couple more things I want to say about the film. But before we do that, let's play a game, Chels. I hope you're ready. It's going to be fun. So this is a game I came up with because, as I said earlier, I could not for a while differentiate between Zach Galifianakis and Jack Black.
Oh.
I think it's going to be very easy for you because you're a Jack Black fan. But let's play.
I really hope so. This could be embarrassing.
Let's play. Is it Zach or is it Jack?
Okay, I'm ready.
So I'm going to give you the name of the film and you're going to tell me who's in the film. Is it Jack or is it Zach? So for listeners playing along, Jack is in this movie. And we have also mentioned that he's in Bernie and that he did those Oscars things. So that's your reference. And Zach Galifianakis is in the Hangover movies. So those are his most famous movies. But when I went into IMDb, they are in a lot of other movies that it could be either. And I was like, oh, is Zach younger? Because I think he maybe came around or became famous a little bit after Jack. But I found they were born on the same year. So...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you might be onto something here.
Yes. So is it Zach or is it Jack? And so I'll start with a movie. I'll start with an easy one. It's a movie that stars another Australian actress, Naomi Watts. King Kong. Is it Zach or is it Jack?
That is Jack because, again, I have mentioned King Kong. That's the King Kong movie I don't like.
All right.
He's fine in it. It's just way too long.
All right, so we'll start with another Australian actress who starred in Margot at the Wedding, Nicole Kidman. Who was her co-star? Is it Zach or is it Jack?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I feel like I'm going to be wrong. Is it Zach?
It's Jack.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, Jack. I do not remember you in that movie. I just remember Nicole.
So there is a movie that I didn't even know existed, but it does exist. It stars Joan Hamm and Gal Gadot and Isla Fisher.
Oh.
And it's called Keeping Up with the Joneses. And it's about apparently two couples in a cul-de-sac. And one couple is CIA operatives and the others want to impress them. So who is...
I remember this and I am trying to figure out.
Is it Jack or is it Zach?
Is this one Zach?
This one is Zach. This one is Zach.
Okay, because I remember this movie, but I am like, this could be any schlubby guy.
Okay.
Because they always seem to pair Isla Fisher with that, like a schlubby guy.
And it's Zach in this cases.
Okay.
I didn't know. So we'll talk about another co-star of Kate's, Rooney Mara from Carol. She made a movie with Joaquin Phoenix called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. And Jack or Zach was in this movie. Is it Jack or is it Zach?
Oh, I for sure did not watch this one because it just did not sound appealing to me. I am gonna guess Zach. I'm gonna be so bad.
It's
at this
actually
game.
Jack.
Jack Black, why are you making movies that I don't want to watch? This is rude.
I know, right? It's very rude. But it is, he was in that movie. And so I have one more for you. I have a couple more for you, but this one I didn't even know that there was a role for a Zach or a Jack. And this movie is a Disney movie. A Wrinkle in Time. Is it Jack or is it Zach?
Okay, I did see this. I believe it is Zach.
It is Zach. It's so.
I saw that in a theater. I might have been the only person who did. It's fine.
Chels, you're getting Zach movies right and Jack movies wrong.
What is wrong with me? Oh my goodness. I must be broken like a clock. I don't know.
So there is a.
I don't know the plot of the movie.
So there is a movie from 2007 that starred Kristen Stewart, directed by Sean Penn, Into the Wild. And either Zach or Jack had a supporting part in it. Is it Zach or is it Jack?
I remember watching this in 2007 and turning it off.
So maybe you didn't get to the part with Zach or Jack.
I probably didn't get to the part, but I'm gonna guess Jack because, I want the best for him, even though I didn't like that movie. Is it Jack? No, it's probably Zach. I'm gonna go Zach.
It is Zach, you're right. You're getting all the Zachs right. Okay, the next movie is a movie that I have heard a lot about, but I've never actually got to watch it. And supposedly it has sort of a quasi-queer romance. So either Zach or Jack has sort of a romance with James Marsden in The D Train. Is it Zach or Jack?
Oh, goodness. I've not heard of this, but now I am intrigued. I'm going to guess Jack because I hope it's Jack.
You're right. It is Jack. And I think this is a movie you and I both have to go watch.
I think we're going to have to find this now.
Yes. The D Train. Okay. So this is my final question. So there is this big flop of a movie that starred Alicia Vikander that's called Tulip Fever. That also had Judi Dench in it and Jack O'Connell and Christoph Waltz, but it also had either Zach or Jack.
I'm going to guess Zach because I hope Jack was smarter than that.
Jack was definitely smarter, and this is a movie with Zach Galifianakis. Chels, that was so much fun.
That is, maybe they are related down the line. I feel like they have to be after they're born in the same year. Are they cousins distantly? I'm going to put that rumor out there. Yes. I'm going to make that up right now.
They might be cousins, totally.
I could see it.
So when I started watching this movie and Kate's character, Florence Zimmerman, kept saying that she's a witch, it reminded me of this interview that Meryl Streep gave that I mentioned only a couple of weeks ago in the episode where we talked about Nightmare Alley. But that interview always sort of comes up for me. It was, I think, on the British show on TV, Graham Norton, and she was talking about how when she turned 40, for a couple of years, every single movie role that she was offered was that of a witch. And we were talking about, when I brought it up in the context of Nightmare Alley, we were talking about how Kate is in her 50s now, but she's playing the femme fatale. She's very seductive in the film. She's the desirable woman. And so things have changed, but not that much, because a lot of contemporary actresses who hit their 40s or 50 play witches, including Kate in this movie. And so I looked at so many, like we have, Angelica Houston in The Witches, Meryl herself. She might have turned it down when she turned 40s, but a few years later, she played a witch in Into the Woods. Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock in Practical Magic. Tilda Swinton in The Chronicles of Narnia. And then, we have Cher, Susan Sarandon, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Although they were all younger and they played sort of like young, they didn't play like old witches. They were kind of like vibrant younger witches in The Witches of Eastwick. But it is a thing that a lot of contemporary actresses, a lot of the people that we like, have played. It's a part a lot of them play.
Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot too, because I've also seen that Meryl interview a long time ago, and I'm like, it is a trend, and I'm like, is it because witch is the only role for a woman in a fantasy? Because even something like Lord of the Rings, like Kate is an elf, but she's a witch. She is a witch elf
Yes.
in the movie. Like, and I'm like, even Anne Hathaway, like in the Witches remake, I'm like, well, she's pushing 40 at this point.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm like,
I mean, she took the Angelica Houston part probably around the same age that she is now when Angelica played it. Yeah, totally.
yeah, it's just a very strange thing. And I think it's only because that might be the only role for a woman in a fantasy film, because we're still working within the you have to be a white dude to be in a fantasy thing. Like, look at Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
What were all the women in there? Like, most of them were just like concubines or something,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
like magic.
Yes. But as I was thinking about this and all these actresses playing witches, I haven't seen the Chronicles of Narnia, so I can't talk to that movie. But I was thinking, like,
I saw that in a
Oh, you
theater
did?
as a child. Well, a teenager.
so is
It's-
still that they're like
it's scary.
a sort of powerful witch?
Yes, she's like the villainous witch, like the main villain of the film. And she is scary. Like, I was a teenager when that came out, and it actually did scare me a little bit. Like, her and how she was like very seductive to this child and manipulative. And also, there's always something a little scary about Tilda Swinton.
Mhm.
Like, there's something always a little off. So, whenever you put that in a children's film, I think that's actually smart casting. But
Yeah.
all of these other witches are kind of like fun witches.
Yes. And strong and powerful. I don't think Florence Zimmerman in The House with a Clock in Its Walls is that powerful. I think any of these witches that we just mentioned, there's also Michelle Pfeiffer in Stardust. Any of these witches that I mentioned will definitely defeat her.
Yeah, like, we are told she is very powerful. She did all this witch magic, and it sounded like witch college at some point, like actually educated. But we never see it except for the one scene that I referenced where she actually gets some of her power back. Like, that's the only time. And it's not super impressive magic.
Yeah. So of all these witches that I mentioned, Chels, if they were all to be in a fight, who would win? Like, I think Marilyn Into the Woods is kind of scary, but I think the witches of Eastwick, those three, even one of them would win over all these others. They seem very powerful to me. Who's your choice?
I mean, as much as I love practical magic, I know they would go down so easily compared to some of these. I'm like torn between like Cher and Swinton, because like Chronicles of Narnia, she's actually actively trying to kill people all the time.
Yes.
It's oddly violent for a children's film, but also I never underestimate Cher. She's been through a lot, and Cher is a witch. I'm like, I'm not messing with that.
I think Cher definitely. I say any of the witches of Eastwick, but definitely Cher is the strongest. You're absolutely right.
Like, she's a witch in real life, y'all. We have to be concerned.
Yes, but it's definitely not going to be Florence Zimmerman from this movie, because
no,
totally not
like, she's
powerful.
making everybody chocolate chip cookies, y'all. That's like her like pride and joy is baking cookies.
Yes, she's very nice. She's in a nice movie. Like, what I really loved about this movie is that it's so nice. Everybody's nice to each other. Like, there is a big evil and they have to like fight him and conquer him and whatever.
But it's like not even like super evil, because he went through World War II and he's just trying to erase the horrors of war.
Yeah.
Like, that's what his main thing is.
Yes. But if I had like, it's such a nice movie, it feels a little, I feel bad that I have to sort of criticize it. But if I had a criticism for it, I will say like it was maybe too nice and there's not enough scares, there's not enough magic. Like we talked about, the background to the characters, there's just not enough backstory to these characters.
It was very long. Like, you literally have to wait an hour before anything really happens. It's so much buildup in this child in school. And at a certain point, you're like, do you want it to be about the child and Jack Black and Cate Blanchett, or do you want it to be about this child and being at school and trying to fit in? Like, you got to kind of pick what you want to do. And they tried to do both, and it's not very cohesive.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, when the kids at school, I genuinely did not care. That's when I was looking at my phone.
There was a lot of the kids at school. I'm like, who cares? And I guess it's a movie for kids, so maybe you want the kids to see themselves on screen, but also that was too much. You have Cate Blanchett and Jack Black. There's no need for like half the movie to be about the kids.
Yeah, like, pull the kid out of school. He's homeschooled doing magic now. It's fine.
Totally. Also, this movie has a very disturbing image. Like, there is this, as they're doing this magic, there is a moment where Jack Black's big bearded adult face is put on a baby body. And I found that to be not scary exactly, but it's just something maybe I didn't want to have witnessed.
It's very strange. It's literally like a CG baby and adult Jack Black's face, the size of said baby on top of it. Yes. And it's like some of the imagery in this film doesn't work. Like, I get they're trying to be funny and scary, but most of the time it's like, I don't know what I'm looking at.
They end up being
I don't know why. It reminds me of some of the jokes in it. There's a lot of poop and vomit jokes. Like, there's this lion topiary outside that just is constantly farting and pooping leaves and like mud and stuff into the kid's face and everybody. And I'm like, is this supposed to be a joke?
Yeah, I know.
It's just very strange.
It is strange. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is just the look of it. It's kind of strange, but it's not that interesting to me. Like, you brought up the topiary, like everything kind of was like, this is strange, but I don't know that I like it, or that it sort of is scary or magical or anything.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't contribute to the world in any way. Like, are they trying to show that everything in the house is magic? Because, like, the chair moves around and stuff and seemingly has feelings, and there are things like that in the house, but it also just doesn't really make sense or add up to anything to me. Because also they're tearing the house apart, so it's like, is the house alive or are we murdering the house? Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah, that also is never clear. Like, you can see that they're trying to tell you the house is maybe alive, but they never follow through with that. So, The House with a Clock in Its Walls is a movie in the Cate Blanchett filmography that I think you can skip. Like, unless you've reached the end, like me, where you have watched everything, you don't really have to.
Or unless you have like a 10-year-old and you just happen to see it on TV, just put it on in the background for them and maybe just pop in and see what's happening. But I'm like, did she need a paycheck or something? Did she just have time off? Like, was this actually for the kid?
I think,
is she doing a friend a favor?
I think it's a combination of all of those things, right? Like, she probably wanted to do one for the kids. She probably was like, why not get a paycheck? Because this is a big studio movie. I'm assuming they got paid well. This is not an independent movie.
And it made money. Yeah. That's the funny thing. Yeah. It like more than broke even.
Yes. So it's all of those reasons. And, Kate is somebody, she's always joked about how she's always in flops. So it's nice for her to have a hit once in a while. And it's so funny. This is like a good transition to the two movies that she has out now, because one of them is definitely a flop, Nightmare Alley. Nobody has went to see that, but I hope you've listened to our episode about it. And the other one is Don't Look Up, which is a huge hit on Netflix. Everybody seems to have seen it. It's so funny. I recorded that episode with Don't Look Up, which we released, 2 weeks ago from when you will hear this. But I recorded it in December because I was going away for Christmas. So I did lots of episodes in December and released it the first week of January. I'm like, people will take a while to get to it on Netflix. I'll release it in the first week of January. By the time I released it, everybody had seen it. The discourse online was kind of crazy. And because we recorded it before people were talking about the movie, like, you listen to our episode and we just reviewed the movie. It's a very sane discussion, but we never brought up the controversy or the discourse. But anyway, so I wanted to ask you about that, Chels. Have you seen Don't Look Up?
I told you before the show that my girlfriend and her family put the film on and we were all trying to watch it and they turned it off. So I've seen part of Don't Look Up. But I will say, outside of Step Brothers, I'm not a big Adam McKay fan.
Mhm.
I hated The Big Short when I saw it. That was like a painful experience of just me and one other friend being in the theater, being like, is this over yet?
Yeah.
We hate this. Like, I mean, and then Vice was like truly my least favorite film in that whole Best Picture lineup, just because at least Green Book was well edited, I guess. Mahershala Ali is pretty to look at. Like, nothing in Vice was pretty to look at. I hated it.
Yeah, if you didn't like Vice or The Big Short, I don't think you're gonna like Don't Look Up. But one of the things that that people have been talking about is the way that Kate looks in this movie, which we talked about a little bit in the podcast we did about Don't Look Up. But I called her in the podcast the fembot. But you know, she has fake teeth. The hair is very blonde, but also just like stuck, like it doesn't move, and the smile is so fake. And a lot of people have been talking about this look. And I think she was going for comedy, and she is funny because this woman is supposed to be this fake news anchor and everything about her look is fake. So I think she got the assignment and got it right. What did you think of that? You must have seen the photos.
Yeah, I saw the photos and I just remember that it's honestly not her decision on set how she looks for the film. I'm pretty sure Adam McKay, based off of how much he's talking on Twitter and needs to be quiet, that he had a very specific thing going in with her character in particular, and she was just gonna do it. And Kate Blanchett, being Kate Blanchett, she just rolls with it. She can do anything.
Yeah.
She's magic. Yes. I wish there was a better version of this film where she got to be kind of a villainous news anchor with no morals and stuff. I mean, she looks the part. I think she always looks great though. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, even though she's made to look a certain way, I'm like, that's still Kate Blanchett. I still see Carol in there.
A little bit of Carol. I really like her chemistry with Leo DiCaprio in this film. And
they have chemistry. I love The Aviator. Yeah. I'm that person. And again, that's a good working relationship to go into a very chaotic film now, all these years later. Yeah. So I'm glad she got to hang out with her old pal.
Totally. And my hope for it is that Kate and Leo do another movie. Do a movie where you both, Leo is at the center of Don't Look Up, but do a movie where you're both at the center of it. And let's get that. Get your friend Martin Scorsese to do it. And a real Aviator reunion.
Really, let's find a good script and a good director, and not whatever Adam McKay is doing with all his Netflix money.
Yes. So this is my sort of like one of my people that I would like Kate to work with in the future. And Chels, who would you like to see her work with?
Okay, I wrote down a few things. One of them just based on a picture that we all saw at the Cannes Film Festival, Kristen Stewart.
Yes.
We all saw Kristen just looking and gazing upon her. We've all been there. So I want that. Randomly, Nicole Beharie, because I know we both love her. And I'm like, I want them being hot and villainous or cool together in something like what Ocean's 8 should have been. And then just because I love 20th century women so much, I'm like, what's Mike Mills doing? Let's do something good for Kate Blanchett.
Yes.
And not like Where'd You Go, Bernadette, where I think she's good, but like that's not a good movie.
These are all amazing choices. Kristen Stewart, Nicole Beharie, Mike Mills, amazing. I love all of them.
Let's get them all doing this movie together. That is somehow in my mind.
Yes. So I have asked almost every guest who comes on the podcast to answer this question. But my own number one answer has always been Pedro Almodovar. That's my favorite filmmaker. Kate is my favorite actor. And I have wanted them to work together for a long time. And this week, the week we're recording, they have announced it's been signed. They've signed it. There's been a rumor going around for a couple of years now that they're going to do an adaptation of the Lucia Berlin book, a manual for cleaning women, but this week came the news that they actually signed it. I was so excited when I read that, so happy about it.
This is full Anne Hathaway dreams come true Oscar moments.
Yes, absolutely. It came true.
This is actual magic happening.
Yeah.
I'm so excited just to see what's going on because like, how do you go wrong?
No, you can't.
Like, it's wonderful. You can't go wrong. It's fine. It'll be fine. Even his worst films are interesting and like his worst films are watchable still.
Absolutely. I love him so much. I love his movies. I love Kate.
It's so
I've
good.
been beside myself.
And he's on such a hot streak.
Totally. Parallel Mothers is great. He's doing the thing with Penelope Cruz, but now he's going to do it with Kate. I'm just like, since this news came out, I'm just like, this is now something to live for. I have to make sure I don't get Omicron so I can watch this
We are going to get every vaccine for the next several years and lifetime, probably, just to make sure we can see this. Yes. I'm so excited.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a wonderful note to end on. Let's hope for a wonderful film between Kate and Pedro. And Chels, you were such a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for coming on Sundays with Kate. This was such a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm so glad I've watched this movie now because I have been curious whenever I realize it exists. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll watch that someday. And this has been so much fun. I love Cate Blanchett. I love Jack Black. This has been a dream.
It's so much fun for me too. And before we go, let our listeners know where they can find you and your work.
I am at Chels725 on Twitter and Letterboxd, and you can find all my stuff really there. And Untitled Cinema Gals podcast, Community Rewatch. Go listen to some stuff. There's way too many hours of me either editing stuff together or talking. Way too much.
Thank you, Chels. And I will continue having wonderful guests like Chels on the podcast to finish the few films that I haven't talked about in Cate Blanchett's filmography, including more talk about Carol. But I'm taking a break from Carol for a couple of weeks. We'll talk about a couple of other films, and then we'll go back to Carol. And then you can find me on Twitter at me_says, or follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Sundays with Kate. And until next time, thank you for listening.